thank you all for coming to this. I've got a few slides. I'm looking very much forward to a good question and answer. I'll give you an update on where the DDG 51 program is today. We've got a lot of exciting things going on. And you can see just there on my slide, that's 2 ships at 2 different shipyards, both of them in the water, both of them in their final throes of testing, and both of them will be going to sea for the first time sometime later this summer. So, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of where we were to where we are. This is a special week for me. It was 5 years ago this week. Where's Pete? Right, my predecessor, Pete Lyle in the back there. It was 5 years ago that Pete and I turned over and that I've been the DDG 51 program manager. And the team has been phenomenal. And we'll talk a little bit about what's happened over that time. So, talk about the profile, a little bit about where we are in production, what we're doing with Flight 3, and then again, I'll be happy to take any questions. So this is my favorite chart to put up here. I only have half an hour, and I really only want to talk for 10 minutes. But my staff especially knows I can put that chart up, and I can start talking for a couple of hours just to this chart. But I'll use it to refresh everyone's mind there. After the initial 62 ships were appropriated, built, and delivered to the Navy and currently in service, starting in FY10, we restarted the program. 4 ships over 3 fiscal years, 10, 11, and 12. Those 4 ships, DDGs 1, 13, 14, 15, 16, all of them in construction now, all of them very far along in construction. I believe 113 and 115, the first ships at Ingalls and Bath will deliver this year, with 114 and 116 soon on their heels behind them. And then you get into the 3rd multi-year. Not very many programs are in production so long that they've done 3 different multi-year procurements. But this is now the 3rd for the DDG ones. 13, FY13 through 17, those 10 ships. The first few are in the early stages of production, both at Bath and Ingalls, although you'll see 117, not so early anymore. She's starting to come along really nicely. She looks like a ship now. She'll go in the water early next year. And then with that, and we'll talk a little bit about Flight 3, program is so successful that in FY16, Congress decided to add most of the funding for an extra ship there in FY16. And then starting in 16 into 17, we'll implement the Flight 3, and we've also started the initial planning and early work towards a 4th multi-year procurement in FY18 and beyond. So that's where we are today with the program. So I'll just talk about where we are at the 2 shipyards, give everyone an update. DDG 113, we had her Aegis light off late last year. She's in the throes of the test program. These ships, we've always historically done 3 sea trials on Aegis ships, and then during the latter part of the first 62, we collapsed those all the way down to a single unified sea trial, what we called a super trial, where we would do builders and acceptance trial all in one week event. For the first few ships of the restart, we've gone back to the 3 trials. An alpha for HM&E, seaworthiness, survivability, a trial Bravo, which was very combat systems focused, where we would do missile firings and gun firings, and then finally an acceptance trial, which is where InServ comes and evaluates the ship for acceptance into the Navy. Trial Alpha 113 will be later this summer. You can see if she went aboard her today, she's starting to look like a really complete ship, coming through the last part of her testing. 114, great launch, great christening. We have the Aegis light off, which is scheduled for the early part of next month. They're going to make that on time, and last time I was at Ingalls, the ship there on 114 was coming along beautifully to be ready for that milestone. And then she'll go to sea early part of next year. 117 had a great keel laying last year, and we expect her to go in the water the early part of next year, and she's really starting to look, if you had a better picture there for 117, I mean, that's a good picture. You can see the aft deck house going on, but if you took back and had a larger picture of her, seeing the whole ship, you can see, especially over time, she's gone from the initial few blocks out on the building ways to now she's almost entirely built out. The only thing left to put on her is the mast. And then 119 started fabrication. She'll have her keel laying here next month. So really starting to get into good production on 119 down at Ingalls. At Bath, 115, which is their first ship, they had her ALO, again, late last year, in the throes of her test program. She's got a trial alpha scheduled again for late this summer as well, with the delivery sometime before the end of the year. 116, Bath, because of their facility, they keep their ships on land a little longer in the production compared to Ingalls. So 116 still on land, but again, you can see all put together, looking very much like a ship, marching towards start of combat systems testing later this year, and launch again at the end of this year. And then 118 started fabrication with a keel laying sometime next year, and then progressing similar to 116 and 115 after that. Again, ships coming along very nicely at both yards. So let me talk a little bit now about the future. And I sound a little bit like a broken record because I've given this pitch a lot and it really hasn't changed. And I used to think, well, something has to have changed or I'm not going to be very interesting when I talk about Flight 3. And then I realized it's actually good that this hasn't changed because it means that we're on track. So Flight 3, the new radar, SPY-6, the DDG-51 fielding of the air and missile defense radar. What do we do to the ship besides changing out the radar? We do three basic things. New power or modified upgrade power. So we go from 3 megawatt generators to 4 megawatt generators and a new 4160 bus tied back into the 450 bus to service the radars. Cooling, replace the 200 refrigeration ton plants with the new high efficiency 300 ton refrigeration plants. And then finally, weight and kg. We thicken up the scantlings, we thicken up the keel, we thicken up some of the low weight in order to bring the center of gravity back down where it needs to be. And then in order to give us the weight to take that extra weight, the stability, we widen the stern a little bit. Move a few berthing compartments around, a little bit of change in the way the internal piping. And when it's all said and done, that's a Flight 3. That's going to be the third ship here in FY16. We had always planned that one of the FY16 ships was going to be the first Flight 3. When Congress, in their wisdom, plussed us up from 2 to 3, said, okay, that plus up ship's going to be the Flight 3. The first two base will be 2As. And that's coming along very well. So the design for this, we're in the throes of detailed design. Both yards of Ingalls and Bath working that. At both yards, we are on schedule. We are on budget for that detailed design. A brief aside, someone who I will not name told me with a straight face. They said this as if it were news to me. They said, we see that you are on track, you are on schedule with the detailed design for Flight 3, but we are worried that if the design falls behind, you could experience cost growth and schedule delay. And I said, right. I said, yes. Like every other project ever undertaken in human history, if you fall behind, you will have cost growth and schedule delay. That is true. The Flight 3 does not. It's a great idea and a great design, but the laws of physics still apply to it, right? I was not able to get around the laws of physics or the laws of economics with Flight 3. It's still part of it. So, but the good news is that both yards are doing great on the design. They're both doing great on it. We're on track, and we're very pleased with how they're doing the detailed design. So let me talk a little bit about where we are with the systems that are my part of it. If you want to know where we are on SPY-6, I will tell you we're on track, and if you want more details on that, my colleague Captain Okano, who's the radar program manager in IWS, I don't know if she's speaking here this week, but she's got it, she's the expert on that. She's delivering me the radar. The first piece, which is the generator, this is a modified repeat of the DDG 1000 generator. DDG, which in itself is mostly in the engine case, a mod repeat of the original Flight 2A generator. The engine that Rolls-Royce puts in that is a DDG 51 engine with a couple of extra compressor stages in order to get you the extra power to go from 3 megawatts to 4 megawatts. So that engine has been through its preliminary and critical design reviews, and we're expecting in the fall of 2017 the first of the units to go to our land-based engineering site at NAVSEA Philadelphia, or excuse me, Naval Surface Warfare Center Philadelphia, not NAVSEA anymore. It's its own Echelon 4 command. And to start our land-based testing there with deliveries to the shipyard soon after that. The 1,000-volt power supply, DRS won a very spirited competition to build that, has been through preliminary and critical design review, completed its production readiness review, and is now in production, and it'll be delivering both to the LBES in New Jersey and to Wallops Island out in Virginia, so that there could be a unit to tie in the power on the power side, and then another unit to test the radar against, so that if we don't get a full end-to-end checkout before it goes to the ship, we've at least checked out all the interfaces ashore before we take that to the ship. Again, the systems engineering here in order to reduce risk, so that when we take this radar to the ship, we have high confidence that all the things that need to support the radar, the power, the cooling, the space, everything that radar requires, we're going to have high confidence that we can deliver that. And then finally, we're in the throes of first article testing, nearly coming to a completion there this summer into the fall for the AC plant, and then we'll be ready to put that into production and start delivering AC plants to our shipbuilders that are the new high efficiency AC plants, roughly another 100 tons per AC plant of cooling. And when I say ton, some people think, wait, that's a refrigeration ton. It's a measure of how much refrigeration a given AC plant can put out. So that's kind of my brief in chief. I've got my summary there. I want to take slides, but I want to say one thing. Someone asked me, one of the reporters asked me if I was going to make news. This might make a little of it. So, getting ready for this, and especially since this is the 5th anniversary of me being in the program, I went back and I looked at what all the different folks said when the program restarted, and I owe a huge debt to the leadership of the program before me. The team has been great, and we've had turnover in the team, and the new people have benefited from what the existing folks and their solid foundation and the wisdom they put in place. But when the Navy made the decision to restart the DDG 51 program, they put a budget request to Congress and said, okay, we're restarting the DDG 51 program. This is going to be tough. It's going to cost more than a regular DDG 51. And in 2010, the President's budget requested $2,240 million in 2010 to go forward and do the first ship, and was roundly criticized by everyone who likes to be a pro at criticizing the Navy. That's not enough. There's no way you can do that. You've obviously underestimated it. I think there was a GAO report at some point soon after that kind of listed, amongst other things, when they were talking about the radar hull study, all the different risks of the restart. And whenever the Navy tries to do something and comes in over budget, that'll make news. But I'm going to make news in a different way. Every fall, the DDG 51 program and all the other shipbuilding programs has a review with the Navy Budget Office, ship by ship. What's that ship going to cost? Because the Navy Budget Office might have to move money around. And I looked at and 113, that FY10 ship is essentially done. Right, we've got a little testing, a little fielding, but we're months away from delivering that ship to the Navy. It's essentially done. The costs are what they are. They're all known. And so the Navy had asked for $2,240 million. So you would think that if we delivered it at $2,240, $2 billion, 240 million. If that was our price today, you'd think we had done a really good job, right? You'd think that would be great. You'd think that'd be worth writing about. Our review with FM, we said, final price of that ship, $2 billion, 100 million, 103 million, 137 million less than what we had estimated back then. Now, 100 million of that was claimed a few years ago by Congress and reprogrammed into the excellent use of giving us an extra ship in 13 when you saw that. So some of those savings have been booked and applied to other Navy priorities. But 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we said $2.2 billion. Today, we say 2.1. So when you read about, oh, there's no way that they're going to bring in the Flight 3 for what they say they're going to bring in. The Navy's always cost more than what they say. I want to go back to the DDG restart and say, nope, sometimes we get it right. Sometimes it takes a little luck, it takes a whole lot of hard work by a whole lot of people, both on the industry side and the government side, but sometimes the Navy does get it right, and maybe that'll make a little news in and of itself. So with that, I will take your questions. Questions, comments, brief alternate speeches. Shell. So right, so for the Flight 3, you'll have 2 buses connected by transformers, right? A high voltage, or it's actually medium and low. So you'll have a medium voltage, 4160 volts. Power will be generated at 4160. The radar will be fed at 4160, and then the 450 existing loads will be serviced by stepping that down with transformers and then using the existing 450 infrastructure. Right, so we'll step down. You'll step down. I don't have it in backup. I actually have a great slide that shows the existing electric plant and then the additional, but right. Thank you, Shell.
Hi, Dan Capt of Aviation Week. In addition to the SPY 6,
yep.
What happens on the Flight 3 with regards to the missile illuminators from the earlier PERC communications?
Same Mark 99, so still 3 illuminators, still Mark 99s. So those are as of yet unchanged. That's the baseline today. There are interesting things happening in illuminator technology, and there are interesting things that you're doing, like on the DDG 1000, where if you have an X-band phased array. So my X-band solution for tracking search and track on the Flight 3 design now is a Spook 9B. Great radar, but it's not a phased array radar, and you can't do some of the things that you could do, say, with SPY 3 as far as illuminator uplink. So right now, the Flight 3 retains the existing 3 Mark 99 illuminators. In a future iteration, because we're doing lots of stuff, in a future iteration, could you alter the ship to take a 4th illuminator? And that might be desirable. Yes, that would be a ship design change. Could you alter the ship to put a phased array X-band solution and do your illuminator uplink that way? Yes, you could. But that was one of the tenets of Flight 3 has been to bound our risk, right? We don't want to have such a radical change that we end up making it too much of an investment at any one time. So the illuminator solution for missile illumination on the Flight 3 is the same 3 Mark 99 illuminators. Could we take a step forward in the future? Yeah, but I want to make sure that I've got SPY 6 working right and doing that before we do something else to the platform. But long answer to a short question. Yes, sir.
Yes. Which shipyard do you think the first Flight 3 will be at, and do you know what ship it will be?
So let me answer that. You asked 3 questions. You only thought you asked 2, but you asked 3 questions. So I'll answer the easiest one first. That 3rd ship in FY16, based on the terms of the last LPD DDG 51 swap agreement between Bath, Ingalls, and the Navy, assigned a DDG amount of workload to Bath Iron Works. So the current strategy is that's a Bath ship, because the LPD 28 was an Ingalls ship. So that balances out the workload and fulfills the swap. So that's the who. You said what? Let me go back to that. I am now going to, so someone again asked if I was going to make news. I am now going to complain. Something I very rarely do. Write this down and take note. This is the multi-year as it exists now. DDG's 117 through 126 inclusive. 10 ships numbered 117 through 126. Because the Navy received from Congress economic order quantity AP for buying things in groups of 10 or more than one, more than two, in the beginning of the multi-year, we have already bought significant amount of components. For example, the vertical launch system is already under contract and funded for these ships out here. It doesn't change. The VLS Mark 41 doesn't change between Flight 2 and Flight 3. Because we're spending money against those ships, the advanced procurement, in the Navy's ERP accounting system, we had to create the hull number and we had to create UX for the ship to account for being spent against it. When Congress added this ship, they've now given us a ship, and you see there's purposely no hull number there. There will be at some point in the future when I write this. You would think if we lived in a sane world that I would, this is 123, this is 124, that I would just make that 125, and then I'd move all the numbers so 126 and 127 became the FY17 ships. But the Navy's system currently for tracking stuff and money against that stuff doesn't allow you to do that. So, I think what's going to end up happening is you'll have 123, 124, and 127 as the three FY16 ships, and 125 and 126 as the two FY17 ships, and 127 will come out several months before 125 and 126. That will confuse everyone, right? They will think. And every time I say this to anyone in senior Navy leadership, they look at me as if I have lost my mind, but I promise what I have told you is 100% accurate. As my business financial manager is in the audience here today, and she's looking at me and smiling that everything I just said is right. Now the other question is, what will it be named? We have names now up through 121. So DDG 120 is named for the former senator from Michigan, recently retired SAS chairman, Senator Carl Levin. That was just announced. And then 121 is the Peterson, Frank Peterson, a deceased senior Marine Corps general. So I don't have names beyond that. Whether or not between now and whenever the Secretary of the Navy chooses to name any of these ships is up to him. Secretary of the Navy controls names. I get a letter from the SecNav's office saying, these are the names of the ships, go put them on the stern. So I don't know what that 127 will be named yet. I have not received such a letter, but where we've got names out through 121.
Can you comment a little bit about electronic warfare?
Electronic warfare CWIP?
Yes.
I would love to talk about electronic warfare CWIP. So the CWIP program, just to kind of baseline everyone, is the Surface Electronic Warfare Improvement Program, being released in blocks. So you have CWIP Block 1, CWIP Block 2, CWIP Block 3, eventually a CWIP Block 4. CWIP Block 2 is the baseline. So now let's do this one. So CWIP Block 1 is basically a Slick 32 improvement. That takes me up through 113 to 116. 117, and I'm pretty sure I have that right. It's not 119. One of my guys here from D5 wants to throw his hand up in the air and say, you're getting it wrong, sir, but I'm 90% sure. 117 and follow is CWIP Block 2 on these ships. So that's the current baseline. CWIP Block 3, and CWIP Block 2 is a huge improvement over Slick 32, over the CWIP Block 1. It's a new EW system with tremendous new capability in that area. CWIP Block 3 takes that tremendous capability and then adds an active component to it. So we are in the middle of working with our partners in POIWS and CO5 to study how we would put CWIP Block 3 on DDG 51s, both the 2As and the 3s. That study, the technical study, is ongoing, so that's certainly something that we plan to do in the future, but I don't have it programmed, and I can't tell you, yep, it's these ships in backfit, it's these ships in forward fit. I don't have that yet, because we've got to finish the technical study so we can make that decision.
Any plans to integrate advanced anti-surface weapons on the Flight 3?
Advanced anti-surface weapons. So right now, it's the same anti-surface suite. Excuse me here. So right now, it's the same anti-surface suite as on the Flight 2s. What you see here is you've got the 5-inch gun. This is a CWIS 1B, so that's a CWIS with an anti-surface. And you can see it here, you've got the whatever the current substantiation of the 25 millimeter side guns for anti-surface defense. I can tell you we're looking intently at things like laws and the next generation of laws for a directed energy weapon. I think the additional power in the 4160 architecture will fit very nicely with that as that becomes ready. I think we're looking, even in the backfit, we're looking at that for both the 2A and the 3 eventually. We don't have a program of record where I can say back on that chart, yes, this ship is the first ship right now that's going to get a directed energy anti-surface weapon, but it's something we're looking at intently and something we're very interested in. I could see that happening on like that first Flight 3 in a post-shakedown availability type time frame. I think that would, by then you'd have a more mature directed energy weapon there in the early 2020s. And we used to have 2 CWISs. That now is a space and weight reservation for something the size of a CWIS. I think that, depending on what is available as the ships are being built and once the ship's commissioned in a backfit, I think you'll see something go there that'll have both an anti-surface and anti-air capability. Whether that's a directed energy weapon or another particular kind of weapon remains to be seen, but there's a space and weight reservation up forward where the forward CWIS used to be that would be used for something like that. Admiral, back in the back there.
Captain, the 127 is under the current acquisition.
Right.
Flight 3s after that, is that going to be a multi-year procurement?
So let me go back and I'll talk about that.
I missed it, I apologize about it.
No, that's great, sir. That's a good question. So I probably glossed over it. So the only reason I want to let me be careful how I answer it, because any future acquisition strategy would be, until it's actually published and approved, would be, as we say, would be pre-decisional. But the notional SECNAV 30-year long-range shipbuilding plan that was just delivered envisions between 18 and 22, 2 ships a year in the Flight 3 configuration. And we've always said we were very happy with how we bought these 10 ships. So another 10-ship, 5-year, multi-year would be what would make sense. Now for that, we would have to go next year to Congress with the 18 budget and ask for legislative authority to do that. And we would have to have that then as our acquisition strategy. I think that it would make sense to do that. That would be using things that were successful in the past in the future. But until we actually come out with that ledge proposal, it's not the official Navy policy yet. But I would say, if you looked at the 30-year shipbuilding plan, that would be a reasonable assumption based on what the Navy has said publicly so far. Any more questions? All the time? All the time? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.